Yo guys, welcome to the Zelda fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got exiled and becomes the first member of Peerage. Huge shoutout to Xover only for this story. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. It was a peaceful night in Kuo, the sky was clear and the moon was shining brightly. The street was now void of people going back and forth and all the shops had also closed. Amidst that silent scenery, under the peaceful night sky of Kuo, a single man casually strolled. Based on his height which was roughly 6 feet, the man must be in his early 20s. He had spiky blonde hair and sapphire blue eyes, which didn't lose their brilliant light even in the dark. His current attire consisted of a long-sleeve orange t-shirt, which had a big reversed power sign in black on the front. The shirt hugged his body perfectly, hinting his slim but muscular, well-trained body underneath. On top of his orange shirt, the man wore a short-sleeved, standing collar white coat which had red details and the kanji word for true in black, surrounded by burning red flame. For bottom, he wore an ordinary black pant and a pair of black leather boots. Overall, the man looked like a cool character in some cool action game who had just stepped into the real world. The white-sheathed Nadachi in his left hand only emphasized that impression even more. ROARRR. If someone was to gaze out of their window at this hour, they would definitely think that their eyes were playing trick on them or they were still dreaming. Standing or rather, lying in the middle of the street was a huge mass of black flesh as big as a 2-story tall building. On its massive and ugly body were numerous bloodshot yellow eyes glaring at every direction like it was searching for something. Instead of limbs, it had numerous black tentacles from small to large, befitting its status as a monster. High level, straight devil. Power. Fast regeneration. Trait. Mindless creature. Unstable body structure. A small whiteboard appeared on top of the massive ugly monster as the man gazed his sapphire blue eyes on it. He knew it was a stray devil, but he refused to acknowledge it as such, simply because it was even uglier than the ugliest thing he had ever known. Gazing at the mindless creature with a serious expression on his face, the man slowly walked toward it without even an ounce of fear. ROARRR. The monster looked at him with its countless eyes and let out a mindless roar, as if it was excited to see its prey. Its numerous black tentacles rushed towards him, wanting to impale him and brought him to its mouth. However, the man still walked forward casually, his right hand rested on the handle of his white Nadachi. Slash. With a simple swing, the man unsheathed his white Nadachi, revealing a divine blade made out of pure blessed divine steel, a material usually used to forge holy sword. With its holy attribute, the sword easily cut through any defense the monster had and also negated its regenerative power. More than a dozen tentacles were cut off with just a single swing of his Nadachi, making the monster roar in pain and anger. With a loud roar, the monster sent all of its tentacles forward. The man didn't flinch however. He ran forward, the blade of his Nadachi shone brightly before suddenly, it erupted in brilliant blue flame. The man stomped the ground and jumped up high into the night sky. The light produced by his flaming Nadachi illuminated his face which was bearing a cold, expressionless mask as he glared at the monster with his shining sapphire eyes. With fluid movements, the man easily cut off and burned all the tentacles came at him with his Nadachi. As gravity began taking him down, a white mid-size magic circle appeared under his feet. Crouching down on the solid magic circle, the man channeled his power into his legs and propelled himself toward the massive monster at high speed while holding his flaming Nadachi with both hands. ROARRR. The monster roared loudly and opened its massive mouth which located on top of its massive body. Its large black tongue flew out like a dangerous snake, trying to catch the blonde man. But even when flying, the man could still control his body to some degree. He shifted his body to the left, barely evaded the gigantic tongue before slashing down with all his might, easily cut it into two. The cut-off tongue was burnt into ashes just a second later with the blue flame of his Nadachi. Another white magic circle appeared beneath his feet and using it, the man lunged at the monster again, this time faster, since he didn't want it to interrupt him again with another attack. Blue flame engulfed his entire form, turning him into a shining blue spear which easily impaled the massive monster, leaving behind a gaping hole in the middle of its body. The blonde man reappeared on the ground after dispelling his blue flame, his eyes still as cold as ice and brilliant as ever. The blade of his Nadachi shone dangerously as he stomped the ground and leaped at the monster. Thanks to the strong divinity of his blue flame and the holy attribute of his Nadachi, the monster couldn't regenerate its wound, making the fight easier for him. Numerous eyeballs flew out of its body and lunged at the man, each with a small mouth full of sharp teeth opened as an attempt to intercept him. Not even surprised by the attack, the blue flame surrounding his Nadachi exploded into a huge wing of blue flame, and with a horizontal slash, the man easily burned down all the eyeballs coming at him. Roar. The monster let out a painful and angry roar. It wanted to revenge, it wanted to eat the man before it, since it could sense a huge amount of magical power inside him, along with some divinity. However, it felt fear. Even though it was a mindless creature, its ability to think when it was still with its master had been taken away the moment it turned into a stray devil. It still had some basic instincts, and those instincts were screaming at it, telling it to run away from the blonde man before it. With its special trait unstable body structure, it could turn its body into water and escaped using the underground waterway. However, the chance for it to utilize its special trait never came. The huge monster fell into two separate parts and turned into ashes seconds later due to the intense blue flames. Standing on the ground, the blonde man slowly sheathed his nadachi, his eyes still cold and his face still bore an indifferent expression as he watched the monster burn away. Finally, when all the ashes had flew away, leaving behind no trace, the blonde nodded and let out a deep sigh. Mission completed. Time to get my money and eat some ramen. The blonde shouted out excitedly as a cheerful smile appeared on his face, his expressionless mask nowhere to be seen. With his white nadachi on his shoulder, the man walked away while humming an unknown happy tune. Man, this sucked, the blonde man complained with a sigh as he counted the money he just received. No, he wasn't complaining about the low reward for slaying such a huge monster, simply because he couldn't. One must know that instead of asking the church or summoning a strong devil to take the job, which was expensive, the commissioner had decided to ask the Underground Rogue Guild because it was cheaper. The Underground Rogue Guild was a worldwide organization for rogue exorcist, onmyaji, magician and overall, people with supernatural ability without a faction to take on mission and earn money. The source of those missions could be from some high-ranking priest or exorcist from the church who wanted to get money without the risk of dying, so they tasked it to the guild, dividing the reward so that both parties could make a profit out of it. For example, if the original commissioner wanted the church to slay a monster with 100 G, the exorcist who took that mission would task it to the rogue guild with only 70 G so that he could do nothing but still earn 30 G. The rogue guild would then put the mission on the board for someone to do it. However, the person who accepted that mission must first pay the guild 25% the reward of the mission, which was 18 G, since without the guild, they wouldn't have any mission to do. So in the end, the reward for the person who accepted that mission from the guild would only be 52 G, which was roughly 50% the original reward. Even so, no one complained. They knew the guild wasn't forcing them to accept those missions. They could just ignore it and did nothing, but if they didn't do anything, they wouldn't have any money. That's the hard life of those who didn't belong to any faction. Saving for almost 3 years and still nowhere near my goal. Ah, dear mother, when can I build a church for you? The blonde man said with a sad face as he let out another sigh. 3 years ago, when he committed treason against the church, he had been exiled and was now a wandering exorcist. Most of the money he earned during the past 3 years, aside from paying for his living expense, was saved up to build a beautiful first-class church for his mother. Only by building a church for her and providing her with lots of faith and belief would she be able to break off her imprisonment. But because the needed money to do that was so large that he couldn't see how much time it would take for him to gather, he had decided to buy the abandoned church in Kuo as the first step to free his mother. It was only a third-rate abandoned church, but its nice position and beautiful scenery had turned it into an ideal place to build a church for his mother. Sadly, even with his 3 years saving, it was still too much. As the blonde dragged himself through the dark alley of Kuo while thinking about his sad future, he saw a young girl leaning against a wall like she was waiting for someone. She was a young girl with a slim figure, black hair styled in a short bob cut, and captivating violet eyes behind her red frame glasses. If he remembered correctly, then the uniform she was wearing must belong to the famous Kuo Academy. With his sapphire blue eyes shining brilliantly as ever, the blonde man lazily gazed at the young girl. High-class devil. Power. Advanced water magic. Intermediate dark magic. Above average magical power. Trait. High-class devil. Scholar. Highly intelligent. Eyes of purity. It's one of the special abilities he had inherited from his mother. It had accompanied him since his birth, but had only been awakened 3 years ago when he turned 18 and met his mother in his dream. Its other name was Mystic Eyes of Matchless Truth, which granted him the ability to see through any kind of transformation and disguise spell. Aside from that, it also granted him the ability to reveal the truth about someone or something, but not much at the moment, since he was still inexperienced. Uzumaki Naruto, formerly a top-class exorcist, exiled after committing treason against the church. Wielder of a holy sword named Dazzling Starlight. Naruto-san, I'm Sona Citri, the current heiress of the Citri clan, nice to meet you. The young girl calmly said when she saw the person she had been waiting for arrived. As for the young man named Naruto, he could only raise an eyebrow at the amount of information about him the girl had in her hands. Are you possibly a stalker? The blonde asked dryly as he lazily gazed at the young girl who upon his question blushed bright red, obviously angered by the very aspect of someone calling her a stalker. What? How could you call me that? Am I look like a stalker to you? Not really much, but I don't think I'm that famous. I just arrived here for a week. Sona looked at carefree blonde and couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. You defeated 9 stray devil in only a week. If that isn't a way to catch others' attention, especially the owner of the city, then I don't know what is. And your information isn't that hard to gather either, I just asked the guild. Apparently, you're one of its most active members, so when I asked about a man with blonde hair using an Itachi, everyone knew it's you. Sona said calmly while fixing her glasses. Hearing her, the blonde could only let out a defeated sigh. He knew this territory belonged to the Citri clan of the devil faction, so he had thought that he would immediately move out after slaying all the stray devils. But it seemed that he had underestimated her ability, or maybe their ability. If he remembered correctly, Kuo was a shared territory of both Citri and Gremory. The Rogue Guild was an independent guild which didn't belong to or ally with any factions, so its member could freely travel into Devil's territory or the Church's territory without any problem. However, that didn't mean they could do whatever they wanted in others' territory, and slaying stray devil was one of them. It's not that they forbid slaying stray devil in their territory, but since stray devil could serve as target for training other than economic purpose, they would rather not letting others steal them all. And since Naruto had eliminated 9 of them in just a single week, it was obvious that he had crossed a line and made them angry. Sorry, it's my fault for slaying too much stray devil in your territory. I will leave immediately, Naruto said sincerely and made his way out of the alleyway. He would come to the neighboring region and continue his business there. What are you talking about? I'm not here for the stray devil. I came here to make a direct request for you. Sona said when she saw the blonde was about to leave. It's true that Naruto slaying so much stray devil in such a short time without permission was challenging their authority, but it's not like she and Riaz had a problem with it. Riaz didn't have a complete peerage yet, and she heard that the redhead was still focusing on finding a good pawn, while Sona herself had yet to reincarnate anyone into her peerage. They didn't have the power to face some of the stronger stray devil within Kuo, so Naruto's appearance had really saved them the time and money needed to request other devils. To tell the truth, the commissioner for all those missions to the Rogue Guild in Kuo was Sona. Aside from having someone do the job for them, they could also use this opportunity to scout some potential peerage member. And Uzumaki Naruto was one such potential peerage member. Riaz literally had stars in her eyes when she thought about scouting such a powerful person into her peerage. They had followed, not stalked, and watched every battles after his 3rd day in Kuo when he slain his 4th stray devil. The blonde was extremely strong and experienced, at least in their eyes. He could use magic to maneuver in the air, enhance his physical power like speed and strength, and most importantly, his ability to create and control the mysterious blue flame. Riaz assumed that it must be a sacred gear, while Sona thought it could be the ability of his holy sword dazzling starlight. But either way, Riaz still wanted Naruto in her peerage, and even Sona, for the first time ever, wanted to recruit someone to be her peerage member. She felt that if she missed this opportunity, she would regret it for her entire life, and so the heiress had listened to her feelings and convinced Riaz to let her try first. If she failed, then it would be Riaz's turn to recruit him. With a sincere smile on her face, Sona confidently faced the Exiled Exorcist, Uzumaki Naruto, and made a request. I want to make you my peerage member, name your price, Naruto-san. What? I want to make you my peerage member, Naruto-san. After confirming that he didn't mishear what the devil girl before him had said, Naruto narrowed his eyes, his indifferent and carefree expression had been replaced with a serious one. My freedom isn't for sale. I'm not buying your freedom. I'm buying your loyalty, servitude and power. What's the difference? The difference is that after you become my peerage member, or more accurately, my knight, you are still free to travel around Japan, hunting stray devil. I'm not forcing you to be by my side at all times, you only need to do some missions I task you with and some duty as a devil. Sona stated calmly with a smile on her face as she summoned a sheet of papers which was the contract she had prepared beforehand and gave it to Naruto. On it was the amount of money she was willing to pay for him to become her knight, his monthly salary, privileges as a member of her peerage, and his duty as a devil. To tell the truth, aside from all her saving ever since she was a little girl, Sona had also took out a portion of her clan's money to increase her success rate. To say that she had gone all out wasn't an understatement. If the same contract was offered to some minor sub-devil clan, they would gladly accept the contract and become her servants, even those subs from the 72 pillars would still find the offer tempting. Just that was enough to show how much she valued Naruto and her determination. And as a devil of the Citri clan, it's possible for you to accept various rewarding missions from Solomon Society to earn more money. I won't stop you. Sona added with a smile while looking at the interested Naruto. Based on her observation, not stalking, and the information she had managed to gather, Uzumaki Naruto was in need of a very large amount of money. No one knew what he needed those money for, but if there was ever a rewarding mission in the Rogue Guild, he would go through all length to complete it before anyone else, no matter how hard or ridiculous it was. With that in mind, she had thought that by offering him a large sum of money, she would be able to buy him into her peerage, but it's not enough. Naruto had completely shocked her with his answer. The blonde shook his head, a disappointed expression on his face after he skimmed through the contract. For a moment, Sona didn't know what to say, as she wasn't sure how should she react to his answer. But, you are the owner of the city, right? Good, then I have an offer for you. Naruto said and handed the contract back to Sona. The serious expression on his face caused Sona to be cautious of his offer. Negotiation wasn't really outside of her expectation, but if his offer turned out to be outrageous, she had no other choice but to give up on him. I won't take the money you pay to buy me, you can keep it. In exchange, I want the abandoned church. Sona narrowed her eyes at his offer. It's true that there was an abandoned church in Kuo. In fact, for safety measure, her and Ria's families had banded together to force the church away from their territories in the past, for them to have a safe time living here. Since Devil couldn't go near the church without suffering pain, they had left it be ever since then. Not that giving the church and the piece of land surrounding it to Naruto could cause any problem, since in the end, it was still Citri's territory when he became her knight, but what could he possibly do to it after he became a devil? I have no problem with that offer, Naruto-san. But may I ask why? I want to rebuild that church. Naruto-san, Kuo is my territory and I don't want any church here. Furthermore, you are about to become a devil. Sona said, her voice as cold as ice as opposed to the friendly attitude she had showed from before. Her sudden change in attitude was understandable though, since no sane devil would want a church in their territory. I understand your worry, Citri. But the church I want to build is different from those you know. First, it's my church, so it's not under control of Vatican or the Angel faction. Second, it's friendly to all race in the world, including devil, yokai, and even demons. Third, it's not worshipping God or dedicated to him, thus having no God's blessing. Naruto explained slowly and calmly to clear the misunderstanding between him and Sona. When he said that he wanted to rebuild the church, Sona must have thought that he was still loyal to the Angel faction and was working in order to return to them. But in truth, ever since he met his mother, his faith in God and what the church called justice had dropped to zero. How can I trust you? What should I do to make you trust me? Don't build any church then. Sorry, but it's impossible. How about you prove that your church is safe for devil? Sona asked, a little uncertain since she hadn't heard about a church being safe for her kind at all. It just sounded ridiculous, but she wanted to believe Naruto. It might be her desire to recruit him that clouded her judgment, but wasn't it fine to at least let him try? If Naruto succeed, then he could build a church here, in Kuo, without affecting her kind as he wanted, while she would gain a strong knight in return. And even if he failed, she wouldn't lose anything other than letting him go, to Ria's hand or out of Kuo. It's worth a shot. Just lead the way. Naruto smiled cheerfully with determined eyes when he heard what the girl wanted him to do. Removing God's blessing on a church or anything that was holy or divine was considered impossible, however, Naruto had a way to, at the very least, negate the effect. I have to confront with Rias about this though. So tomorrow's morning, we would come to see your performance. Fine. Tomorrow then. With that said, Sona slightly bowed to show her respect before walking away, leaving behind an excited Naruto in the alleyway. How could he not be excited? He had wanted to buy that abandoned church ever since he knew about its existence, but couldn't since he didn't have enough money. Now though, a devil suddenly appeared out of nowhere and agreed to give him the abandoned church in exchange for him becoming her knight. If that was some normal devil, then he would just brush off the offer and walked away, since he knew very well the fate of a reincarnated devil should they chose the wrong master to serve. However, the one coming for him was Sona Citri of the Citri clan. Ranked 12th among all 72 pillars, Citri was famous for their intelligence, strong economic power and fair treatment for their peerage, servants. The contract Sona had offered him was quite tempting too, since it was even better than working for the church. More freedom, higher salary, more privileges, etc. He couldn't ask for a better contract. From the beginning, Naruto had never had a problem with becoming a devil, since his mother and even Naruto himself believed that every race, every being had the right to live equally. No race was better than others. Devil and fallen angel were once angels until they fell from heaven a long time ago, so, basically they were of the same race, all created by God. They just changed over time to better suit the environment and conditions they lived in through evolution and adaptation. In the supernatural world, human was viewed as the weakest being, but if humans ceased to exist, then what would become of all the god and goddess in this world? Those deities fed on the faith energy that human dedicated to them through religion to exist. If there were no longer human in this world, they would also disappear. All race, all kind of beings were equal. That's his mother's belief and was also his belief. It's not like he wanted to build an ideal world where every race and kinds lived with each other peacefully and happily, since it was just childish and naive. As long as emotions existed, so were evil intentions. As long as differences existed, so was conflict and war. He just opposed to God's teaching that devil was evil being and thus must be eliminated. Fallen angel was those who had strayed from the right path and thus must be eliminated. That's just plain stupid and ridiculous to judge the life and death of others based on their race and kind. Stray devil was an exception though, since they weren't considered a race or a kind, but more like mindless animal who gave in to their evil desire. His belief was only further proven true during his 3 years journey around the world. He had met various races including a true vampire, descendant of a Shinso vampire, a yokai monk, etc. Not all of them were evil like what the church taught him to believe. Naruto had long lost his faith in God in heaven. He couldn't view her exact stats since he was still inexperienced, but it seemed that Ria's was a level stronger than his soon-to-be master Sona Citri. Normally, an intermediate magic user couldn't hope to compete against an advanced magic user, but Power of Destruction was a unique magic, which made it 1 tier higher than water magic, so that made them even. However, Ria's large magical power allowed her to use stronger and more dangerous technique, while Sona's reserve was only above average, which put her at a disadvantage. Competing raw power and fighting strength, Sona would definitely lose to Ria's. By the way, he didn't need his eyes of purity to see that Ria's was an enchantress. Honestly, just look at her killer body, perfect. He knew he shouldn't say this but. Dear mother, she is even more beautiful than you, even though only by a little at that moment, Naruto regretted promising Sona to become her knight. Too bad. I also want you in my peerage, but Sona beats me this time, Ria said with a sad sigh as she honestly regretted giving Sona the first shot. Uzumaki Naruto was such a strong exorcist. With him in her peerage, solving her problem would be a piece of cake later. However, Sona hadn't recruited anyone yet, so she was also happy for her best friend. It's too soon to say that, Ria's. If Naruto-san couldn't remove God's blessing on the abandoned church, I can't and won't give it to him. And without the abandoned church, I can't recruit Naruto. Sona said calmly as she fixed her glasses. After that, it's my turn, right? Ria's asked with an excited smile on her face. It's not that she didn't want Naruto to succeed, but if he really failed, it would be her turn to recruit him into her peerage. And for someone of his caliber, she would even be willing to cut a piece of territory to recruit him, providing that piece wasn't too big. At that, Sona nodded, even though hesitantly, that was basically what they agreed with each other before. You really have some trust issues, my soon-to-be master. As soon as the words get out of my mouth, it becomes the truth. I have never lied before, at least to my business partner. With that said, Naruto walked toward the church, leaving behind a serious Sona and an amused and curious Rias. Both of them wanted to see what method Naruto would use to remove God's blessing on the abandoned church. Even if it was an abandoned church, the blessing was still there, making it extremely uncomfortable for devils to go near this place. It was only a small part of the city though, so even if Naruto couldn't remove God's blessing, Rias would still be happy, since it would be her turn to recruit him. Sona wouldn't be so funny though, since she would lose a strong knight. Looking at Naruto's broad back and the kanji word for true on his coat, Sona bit her lip. She and Naruto had just met yesterday, and they were supposed to be enemy too since he was formerly on the church's side. She literally had no reason to trust him whatsoever. But now that she had determined to get him into her peerage, she had even let him try removing God's blessing on the abandoned church, even though it sounded ridiculous, she needed to, at the very least, trust him till the end. And beside, if Naruto had called her his soon-to-be master, she needed to act like one too, right? You best in there, my soon-to-be knight. Sona said, feeling a little awkward since it was her first time cheering someone else. Upon hearing those words, the blonde stopped, a smile appeared on his face. But instead of turning back, he just waved his right hand over his shoulder and bravely stepped into the abandoned church. Not that he needed her cheering him on, but it made him feel a little more motivated. Stepping into the abandoned church, which was covered with dust and damaged heavily by times, Naruto left his Nadachi at the entrance and continued walking forward. As soon as he reached the center of the church where people usually kneeled down and prayed, he stopped. Gradually, his magic power began building up as blue flame covered his entire form, however, instead of burning him, the flames surrounding his form protectively, like a shield, a barrier. So warm, Naruto thought as he kneeled down and closed his eyes, focusing on the image of his mother who was imprisoned on the high heaven. He clasped his hands together like he was praying, the blue flames surrounding him spread out, covering the entire church, making it look like it was caught on fire. Inhaling deeply, Naruto opened his sapphire blue eyes which were shining brightly like two dazzling stars in the night sky. The entire Kuo shook as he released all of his magic power. Rejected paradise, Naruto whispered, and immediately, the blue color of his flames enveloped his vision. What is that? Ria shouted out as she saw a large barrier made entirely of blue flame envelop the abandoned church. The barrier looked like a sphere of blue flame so dense she couldn't see what was happening inside. A bead of sweat ran down her forehead, however, when she sensed the mixture of holy energy and divinity radiated from the barrier. The kind of barrier that separates spaces, a very advanced one at that too. Sona answered. She was also sweating at the amount of holy energy the barrier was radiating. She didn't know what was happening inside or what would happen if she was caught in it, but if she was to force her way in, she would undoubtedly perish. Inside the barrier. Unknown to outsiders, under the effect of rejected paradise, Naruto's strongest technique, which utilized the power he inherited from his mother to the utmost, he had turned the entire area inside the barrier into heaven. No, not that heaven, but his heaven. The soft ground beneath his feet was white cloud that was a little pink, while above his head was a vast light blue sky. The sunlight there was softer than the outside world, so looking at the beautiful sky didn't hurt his eyes. Occasionally, he could see a shooting star or two flying by, which wasn't an everyday occurrence on Earth. The scenery around him was filled with colorful bubbles from small to large, floating in the air, drifting along the gentle wind ever so slowly. When he touched them, instead of popping with a puff and vanished, the bubbles were only pushed back. After enjoying the beauty of his own heaven for a while, Naruto walked forward toward a specific place in his heaven. Even though the scenery seemed vast and aside from clouds and bubbles, there were nothing else, but since this place was his heaven, his domain, he could change it with just a single thought. From outsiders' view, rejected paradise would look like a really advanced spatial barrier that completely separated the space inside from the outside world. It was true in a sense, but rejected paradise was more than just a spatial barrier. It was Naruto's ultimate ability, his trump card for all kind of trouble. By utilizing the ability he inherited from his mother, Flame of Creation, to the utmost limit he could manage, Naruto was able to briefly materialize and project his inner world, his own heaven, onto the reality. It was kind of like creating a new world that was under his rules, which overlapped the actual world on a very, very small scale. In this world, his overall combat ability was boosted heavily, especially his Flame of Creation. Aside from that, his inner world, rejected paradise, also housed a strand of consciousness of his mother. Naruto, a gentle voice called out to him, causing Naruto to smile from ear to ear. That was the voice of his beloved mother. "Dear mother, I'm home," Naruto said as he looked at the vivid image of a young woman in her late 20s floating in the air, 12 large white wings on her back. She had blonde hair as long as her height, which flowed down her back, reaching her large breast and covering her nipples on the front. Several bangs covered her forehead. Like Naruto, she also had a pair of shining sapphire blue eyes, which must be a trait he inherited from her. By the way, she was currently naked, which showed off her snow-white skin and perfect figure. Her breasts, while not as large as Ria's ones, was still considerably large and very enticing. She also had a flat stomach, slim waist and hips of the perfect measurements. Even though Naruto had already gotten used to seeing his mother in her birth suit, the blonde couldn't help but gulped. My eyes must be deceiving me back then. Mother is perfect. There is no one more beautiful than her. Naruto thought with a strong nod of his head. His mother was the very definition of the word perfection. To tell the truth, ever since he met her, he had been jealous of his father. But he wouldn't try anything on her, not that she would ever allow him to though. Maybe. Ex-Seraph Michaela, consciousness. Former commander of Heaven's army. Former angel of creation, truth and justice. Power. Pinnacle light magic. Pinnacle holy magic. Extreme elemental magic, fire, water, wind, earth. Greater elemental magic, thunder, ice, dark. Unique. Extreme flame of creation. Unique. Extreme eyes of purity. Immense magic power. Pinnacle swordsmanship. Greater enhancement magic. Greater archangel's blessing. Trait. Ex-Seraph. Archangel. Angel of creation. Michaela's justice. Michaela's belief. Naruto's beloved. Enchantress. Intelligent. Sealed, physical body only. Spirit, consciousness only. Naruto let out a deep sigh of respect and amazement after skimming through the long whiteboard that appeared next to his mother. Looking at her status always left him speechless because of how powerful she was, as expected of the first ever seraph god created. No, he was joking, his mother was really the first ever seraph god created. She was even older than Michael, even though it's only by several minutes. Michaela was very famous during her time serving God as Heaven's strongest seraph, but that was a long, long time ago, even before the outbreak of the Great War between three factions. However, during the time when Lucifer rebelled against God, Michaela suddenly vanished. She didn't want to participate in a war against her own brothers and sisters, even if it was God's order, and thus she locked herself in her own world. Several decades later was the creation of the race called Devil led by Lucifer, and after that was the long-lasting war between heaven and hell by God's order. Michaela returned to heaven as per God's order, but instead of leading the heaven's army to assault hell, she chose to stay behind and defend heaven. Michaela refused to massacre her own siblings, even if it made her turn against her very creator. Irritated at her stubborn attitude, God took away her commander title and gave it to her brother, Michael, his favorite son. As the war went on and on, numerous angels grew tired of fighting and killing their own siblings, thus also rebelled against God. But instead of fighting him like what Lucifer did, they chose to ignore God's teaching and establish their own organization with their own belief. Led by Azazel, they established their own nation called Grigori, where they could live freely without fearing the fire of war. However, seeing his own creations turning their back against him one after another, God called them fallen angel, those who had strayed from the right path, and ordered his angels to also eliminate their fallen siblings. Thus opening the great war between three factions which last for many centuries. Several hundreds years after the war broke out, Michaela, who also grew tired of the endless fighting, sneaked away from heaven and started living on the surface world with her power sealed so that God wouldn't find out. During that time, she traveled around the world, experienced many new things and met various races. After seeing the world with her own eyes, finding out that God's teachings wasn't always right, Michaela started to disregard God's teachings and manifest her own faith and belief. She believed that every being that lived on this world were equal, and God's teachings was nothing but blind justice. Thus, with that in mind, Michaela wanted to rebel, she wanted God to fix his teachings, to change heaven's systems. However, at that time, God had already been defeated with the sacrifice of Lucifer and his group. Having his body destroyed, God would still live on thanks to the faith and belief of human who worshipped him, however, it would take him several centuries to recreate his body, making Michael the temporary ruler of heaven. Seeing that her opportunity to take over heaven and change how the world operated had come, Michaela went back to heaven and challenged Michael to a fight for the throne. Knowing Michael, he would most likely follow God's teachings and rule over the world the same way God did, which Michaela couldn't let it happen. However, due to days of living on the surface world and not bathing in God's holy energy, her power had dwindled over time, while Michael, after taking over heaven's system, had become even more powerful, which was outside of her expectation. The fight continued on for several days as two strongest beings of heaven battling each other without holding anything back. In the end, Michaela lost to him, fair and square. When the formerly strongest seraph was ready to receive her divine punishment, Michael, who out of respect and love for his only older sister, had overlooked the incident and let her return to the surface world. After returning to the surface world, the exhausted and badly injured Michaela was assisted by a famous magician named Minato. Touched by his kindness and his dream for coexistence between all races, Michaela sealed her power and lived on as a normal human with him. The two fell in love with each other over time, and the proof of their love was the birth of Uzumaki Naruto. However, tragedy occurred after Michaela successfully gave birth to their child. Sleeping for several centuries, God had finally awoken. His physical body was still regenerating, but his consciousness had returned to rule over the world. Sensing the birth of a hybrid between angel and human, God grew furious and ordered his angels to capture Michaela. Even when fighting with all her strength, Michaela couldn't escape and was taken back to heaven, where God imprisoned her while Minato was killed during the attack. Thanks to Michaela's fast thinking and Minato's prowess as a magician, they had managed to seal Naruto's angel power, turning him into a normal child, and sent him to a small church in Japan, where he would grow up into a fine exorcist, safe and sound. It was all Michaela's plan. If Naruto lived in a church where holy energy was rich for a long time, he would gradually had his angel bloodline awaken and become a Nephilim. When that time came, the strand of consciousness Michaela had left inside her seal on Naruto would also awaken and told him everything he needed to know about himself, about his parents and about the danger ahead. As expected, Naruto had truly awoken as a Nephilim when he turned 18 and met the consciousness of his mother in his dream. After being told the fate of his parents and the danger he would face if he remained at the church, Naruto immediately burned down the church he was operating at, stealing their holy sword Dazzling Starlight and become a rogue. As his mother had said, because God couldn't find him during the attack and during the time he grew up, he wouldn't find him now, since his awakening was suppressed by the seal and only known by him and his mother. However, if Naruto was to remain at the church, which was God's domain, he would undoubtedly notice his angel power over time. And that led to his current situation as a rogue exorcist who was about to turn into a reincarnated devil. Name: Uzumaki Naruto. Race: Nephilim. Age: 21. Height: 181 meters. Weight: 77 kg. Power: Advanced elemental magic, light, wind, fire, lightning. Intermediate holy magic. Unique. Advanced flame of creation. Unique. Intermediate eye of purities. Vast magic power. Greater swordsmanship. Advanced enhancement magic. Novice Nephilim's blessing. Trait. Nephilim. Exiled Exorcist. Michaela's beloved. Michaela's belief. Michaela's justice. Michaela's blessing. Intelligent. Handsome. Innate stats. Strength. A. Agility. A+. Endurance. S. Magic. A. Special. A. Luck. NA. You have grown well, Naruto. Michaela said with a smile on her face as she looked through her son's status board. Her special skill eyes of purity had been with her the moment she was created by God, which was several thousand years ago, so her mastery over it was far higher than Naruto's. With her special eyes, she could see almost everything about a person or an object, including their innate abilities and hidden potential. If she wanted, she could even see them naked. I still have a long way ahead of me, mother. I see that you want to become a devil for that Citri girl. Michaela said slowly, her expression saddened for a moment. You don't need to exchange your freedom for my sake, Naruto. The ex-seraph said. Even though she was just a strand of consciousness, she was still the ex-seraph Michaela, Naruto's mother. She didn't want her son to sacrifice his future for her freedom. It's true that it was Michaela who told Naruto the method, but it was out of answering his question. She didn't expect him to take it so seriously, even making it his life goal. After Michaela was taken back to heaven, instead of turning her into a fallen or a devil, God had imprisoned her instead. He didn't want to risk having someone of her caliber on the enemy side. But killing her wasn't an option either because it would affect his angels. Michaela was his first ever creation, she had followed him even before the beginning of humanity. If he suddenly killed her, it would affect his remaining angels, making them question their God, or worse, turning their back on him. However, with Michaela's prowess as the first seraph and formerly heaven's strongest angel, if she bathed in heaven's holy energy for long, she would have enough power to break out of her prison and escaped. To prevent that, God had first and foremost denied Michaela's existence as an angel, turning her into an ex-seraph. By severing her connection with heaven's system, God had turned Michaela into a being that was an angel, but not an angel at the same time. Still a seraph in both appearance and characteristic, but lost what it took to be an angel. What God had taken from Michaela was the ability to absorb holy energy in the air and turned it into her magic power. Holy energy was a part of God's heaven system which he created to power up his angels' army and those he blessed. But with her existence as an angel denied, Michaela was also rejected by the very energy that created her. After ensuring that Michaela would no longer be able to recover her magic power, God sealed her within the deepest part of heaven. However, God had forgotten that there was one other type of energy an angel could absorb that wasn't a part of his heaven system. It was humans' faith energy. Maybe it was just a coincidence that God didn't seal her ability to absorb faith energy, or it could be that he couldn't seal it, since it was the very energy that maintained his existence, thus not under his control. But Michaela had retained her ability to absorb faith energy and recover. However, unfortunately, Michaela wasn't a well-known angel because she had disappeared from heaven for too long. There was no church built in her name or dedicated to her, she also had no followers or even believers, since no one knew about her existence, thus preventing her from gaining any faith energy. That's why when Naruto asked her about the method to free her, Michaela had told him to build some church for her and spreading her name and belief. She didn't expect Naruto to take it so serious though, since it was an impossible task to spread a new religion in this day and age. One must know that most of the faith energy in the world was dedicated to God of Bible and Buddha of Buddhism. Their religion was the largest, after that was Hinduism, Shintoism, etc. Competing against those large and old religions was just impossible. Furthermore, since she was imprisoned, how could she perform any miracle to gain followers? It's not like I would lose anything though. The contract is pretty good, and becoming a devil is fun too. At this, Naruto's expression softened as he gazed lovingly at his mother. Freeing you is my dream, mother. You are my only family. I will go through any length to do it. Even if God stand in my way, I won't stop. Tears flowed out of Michaela's eyes as she smiled happily at the affection Naruto dedicated to her. At the same time however, she also pitied herself since she felt that she wasn't that much of a mother to him. Aside from giving birth and blessing him with her power, she hadn't done anything special to Naruto. Without her physical body, she, as a strand of consciousness, could only watch as her son gradually grew up as an orphan in the church, then became a fine exorcist, and now, was about to become a devil for her sake. No amount of words could describe her current emotion because, at the same time, Michaela was immersed in happiness, guilty, self-pity, satisfaction, and proud. Slowly, she floated down. With her face still stricken with tears, Michaela embraced Naruto tightly and affectionately. Since no words could come out of her mouth to describe her feelings to him, Michaela could only hug Naruto tightly as a way to show how much she appreciated his action and love for her. "Thank you, Naruto." "You're welcome, Mother," Naruto whispered softly as he held Michaela in his arm protectively. His determination only hardened after witnessing the hot tears of his beloved mother. "I will bless the abandoned church with my greater archangel's blessing. This way, the old god's blessing will be replaced and the church will turn into a safe haven for all races." Michaela, she explained to Naruto with a gentle smile on her pretty face. Usually, replacing God's blessing would be near to impossible since he was extremely powerful, which also made his blessing extremely strong. But fortunately, after years of abandonment, the blessing on the church in Kuo had been weakened, so Michaela could overwrite the blessing on it with her own. Every angel, after reaching a certain height of power, would gain the ability to bless something or someone. Through blessing, the angel usually expressed their ownership on the object and the person they blessed. Blessing someone would also grant them a part of the angel's power, while blessing an object would increase its holy attribute and divinity. Blessing a church was different however, as blessing a church equal to turning it into their possession, marking it as their territory, a church dedicated to them. Each angel's blessing was also different from other. Take God's blessing as an example, every person, usually human, blessed by God, would have a sacred gear hidden inside their body. If they were lucky, they could get one of the 13 Longinus, if not, they would get a normal one. When God blessed a church and turned it into his territory, his blessing would turn the church and the land surrounding it into a kind of holy land that inflicted pain and suffering to all beings he deemed evil like vampire, devil, yokai, etc. As for Michaela, since her belief and power was vastly different from God, her blessing was also different. A person blessed by her would gain an innate talent for swordsmanship, enhancement magic and the hidden unique skill unique blue flame. Naruto was a special case however as he was her direct descendant, thus enabling him from inheriting all of her unique skill and affinity. As for a church blessed by her, it would have denser magic power in the air for the purpose of strengthening oneself and recovery, with no other side effect. Her church also didn't forbid anyone from entering, even Demon Lord. Unlike God, whose belief was vanquish all evils, Michaela's belief was protect all races. She treated all races equally and would only judge them based on their personality and deeds. "Yes, please, Mother," Naruto said and took a step back. As he was currently, he couldn't help his mother with the blessing. His beginner Nephilim's blessing was of the lowest and weakest rank, it couldn't hope to overwrite the old blessing on the abandoned church, so he could only let her do the job. Even though rejected paradise was, from outsiders' view, only large enough to cover the abandoned church, but the space inside was actually very vast, since it was Naruto's inner world. Looking at the abandoned church, Michaela closed her eyes and released her power. Her 12 wings shone brightly as it reacted to the holy energy stored in her body. Even though she couldn't recover her lost energy, Michaela still had enough inside her to scare other below Demon Lord class and Seraph class shitless. Her sapphire eyes shone brightly when she opened them again and gazed at the abandoned church. Since God's blessing was one of the strongest blessings in the world, she would need to muster up all of her holy energy to override it. It's dangerous because she would only be keeping the minimal amount of holy energy needed to maintain her existence within Naruto after that. But with the abandoned church soon dedicated to her, she would gradually recover. Greater Archangel's blessing. Michaela shouted out as radiant white light erupted from her body and enveloped Naruto's inner world. On the outside world, 30 minutes had passed, but Naruto still had yet to come out. The sphere of blue flames also didn't show any sign that it would disappear soon either. Rias was starting to lose her patience, while Sona was still keeping her calm face. As she had already decided to trust Naruto, she would keep her patience and wait for him till the end. All the while praying for his success. "Hey, Sona, look at that." Suddenly, Rias shouted out and pointed toward the sky above the abandoned church, where a river of light was flowing down and into the sphere of blue flame. Looking at the scene before her, Sona narrowed her eyes as she remembered something she had read before in a book. The heaven's gate opens, the divine light shines down. An angel descends, bringing down the blessing. Sona calmly and correctly recited the description she had read in a book about the descending of an angel. Almost instantly after hearing that, sweats poured down Ria's face as the thought of facing an angel crossed her mind. "An angel is about to descend?" the redhead hesitantly asked. Unlike Sona, Rias didn't read that many book, so she wasn't as knowledgeable. But the descending of an angel wasn't something that could be said so easily, especially one that could radiate so much divine light. Only their divine will. An angel has just blessed this abandoned church, an extremely strong one at that too. Possibly a cherub or even seraph. As if waiting for Sona to end her speech, a figure made entirely out of divine light of a female angel with 12 large wings on her back appeared above the blue sphere. She spread her arms out like she was welcoming the world before bursting into a shower of light and disappeared. The river of divine light also disappeared with her, leaving behind numerous sparkling light particles in the air. The sudden turn of event and the beautiful scene had left Riaz and Sona speechless. For them, it was their first time seeing the blessing of an angel. She was looking at me. But aside from that, there was also something else on Sona's mind. That was what the angel had done before she disappeared. Even though the figure only appeared for several seconds, Sona could swear that she had looked at her, directly at her, for a while before she disappeared. What had just happened? Riaz slowly asked after finally regained her demeanor. Regarding her question, Sona could only keep silence as she was also confused and shocked by the sudden event. She knew that was what happened when a strong angel blessed a church and marked it as their territory, but the abandoned church was already blessed by God, it didn't need any more blessing. But suddenly, an angel descended and blessed the church while Naruto was inside. It couldn't be a coincidence, right? And why did that angel look at her? Inside rejected paradise. It's done, Michaela said tiredly and fell down. She didn't even have enough energy to float in the air anymore. Overriding God's blessing truly was a hard task, even though it had been weakened over time. Quickly, Naruto caught his mother and held her protectively in his arms. His expression saddened for a moment as he hated himself for not being able to assist her in the blessing. Rest for now, mother. You can leave the rest to me. Naruto whispered into Michaela's ear before planting a gentle kiss on her forehead. The ex-seraph smiled happily before closing her eyes and faded away. Since she was just a strand of consciousness, she could just disappear like that to save her remaining power. After confirming that her mother still existed within his inner world, Naruto let out a deep sigh and gazed at the completely changed church before him. Aside from blessing the abandoned church, turning it into her territory, Michaela had also used some of her power to fix the church. By using her unique extreme flame of creation, Michaela had turned the church back to its original beautiful state, fixing all the holes on the roof and also repaired all the furniture inside. Nodding in satisfaction even though he didn't do anything to help his mother, Naruto smiled from ear to ear, his earlier depression forgotten. Now that the blessing is completed, the only thing left is to name it, I guess. Placing a hand on his chin, the blonde furrowed his eyebrows in thought as he tried to come up with a good name for the first church dedicated to his mother. The first church dedicated to his mother, Michaela. This is for you, dear mother, Naruto whispered with a satisfied smile and ignited his index finger with blue flame. Slowly and carefully, the blonde wrote the name he came up with on the air before sending it at the church. The blue flames collided with the hard surface of the church and soon died down, revealing the name engraved on the board hanged above the church's entrance. The first ever church that worshipped his mother, Michaela's church. Thank you very much. One Uzumaki Naruto said with an awkward smile on his face as he handed over a piece of flyer to the young lady next to him. The young lady, about 20s or so, smiled at him seductively and winked before taking the offered flyer and walked away, all the while swaying her hips from left to right. With a twitching eyebrow, the blond man turned around and grasped the shoulder of his companion, a large orange bear who was also handing out flyer like him. Sona-san, can you tell me why are we doing this, again? He asked through gritted teeth, while doing his best to calm down lest he exploded in the middle of the street. For Satan's sake, after turning into a devil, of all things possible, his first mission was handing out flyers. Handing out flyers so they can summon us. The orange bear costume-cladded Sona Citri answered impassively as she gave a curious child passing by a flyer. Right, he wasn't advertising some amateur company for pocket money, but giving out devil summoning magic contained paper to the human passing by in hope of getting a contract. For all his life, the former rogue had always wondered what method the devil used to spread their influence in the human world, and of all the ways possible, they used the most primitive one. Handing out a flyer to a random businessman passing by, the blonde watched with no surprise or disappointment as the man only gave the piece of paper a single glance before throwing it in the rubbish bin nearby. Looking down at the stack of flyers in his hand, Naruto couldn't help but deadpan at the poor design. It was a simple paper with a large magic circle printed in the middle of it and the words "We will make your wish real" in Japanese at the top and bottom. To say it couldn't get any simpler was an understatement. Handing out flyer was the most primitive and easy method to advertise something because of its cheap price. But it was also the most ineffective method if not used right. The first and foremost condition for this method to succeed was an eye-catching flyer, and the devil had miserably failed in making one if the poorly designed flyer in his hand was any indication. Sure, some human would be curious to try it out, but they were few in number. If his guess was right, only about 5% of the flyers handed out were used, and that was he being generous. The second condition for a successful advertisement using flyer would be choosing the right targets. If choose poorly, like those who didn't believe in myth or those content with their life, they wouldn't even keep the ridiculous flyer, let alone using it. That businessman who threw the flyer into a rubbish bin was the perfect example. He was successful in his job, content with his life, so he didn't bother believing in something ridiculous like a fairy appearing out of nowhere granting him a wish. For all the wisdom, cunning and intelligence the devils were told to possess in myths, they were surprisingly hopeless in advertisement, or there was something more to these flyers than he realized. Not possible, Naruto thought with a sigh as he handed out another flyer, this time to a beautiful female student passing by. Long brown hair tied into a ponytail that passed her waist and large hazel eyes shining with cute innocence, the young woman clad in Kuo Academy uniform, smiled kindly as she received the offered flyer. Her figure, while not as voluptuous as Ria's or Akeno, was still beautiful enough to put most models to shame with such slim waist and long, slender legs. Her breasts, while also not as big, were still above average by a good amount and would definitely satisfy any man who was fortunate enough to touch them. All in all, the young woman was a natural beauty whose looks reminded him of the word neat. "Thank you very much," Naruto said with a professional smile on his face as he silently admired the young teen's beauty. Even though he didn't even know her, Naruto must admit that whoever ended up marrying this girl was lucky. "I'm glad I can help. Have a nice day, Anu," the young woman asked with an adorably curious look on her face. Her voice was soft and beautiful like some kind of music which momentarily captivated the blonde. Quickly regaining his composure, Naruto grinned at the young woman and introduced himself. "I'm Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. Nice to meet you. Saiso. My name is Hazakura Saiso. Pleased to meet you, Uzumaki-san." The young girl identified as Saiso, introduced herself with a smile before pointing at the stack of flyer in Naruto's hand with a curious look. "Is what written there real? Can you really make my wish come true?" she asked. "Call me Naruto, I'm not one for formalities, Saiso-chan. And yes, if it's within our power, then we can make your wish real." The blonde replied professionally with his years of experience working at the underground rogue guild. Satan knew how many negotiation and trade he had done during his time as a rogue. At his answer, Saiso let out a cute chuckle, which caused Naruto to blush, folded the flyer and hid it in her skirt pocket. "I will believe you and keep it with me then, Naruto-san. Yumu. And whenever you are in trouble, just grip it tightly and call out my name. I will appear right before you," the former rogue said with a grin on his face as he waved goodbye to his newly acquainted beautiful friend. After Saiso's figure was no longer visible, the blonde glared down at the stack of flyer in his hand before throwing it all away, surprising his king in bear costume and the passing humans around. "What are you doing, Naruto-san?" Sona asked, clearly intrigued and angered at her knight's action. Like him, the Citri heiress also found the job to be unbearable and boring, but it was the only way to spread their influence. Without the flyer, ordinary human couldn't summon them the devil, so even though Sona knew the method was pretty much ineffective, she had no other choices. Fulfilling contracts to build up merits was the only way to get promote for devils, so it wouldn't do if no human could summon them. "Let's return, Sona, and prepare to start a new business," Naruto said with a grin on his face as he stared at the once abandoned church far away. Even though Sona was still wearing her bear costume and had her face hidden, the blonde could easily imagine his king spotting an incredulous expression on her face at what he just said. But he wasn't lying when he suggested starting a business. The idea had just hit him, and even though he didn't have the brightest mind for business and making money, Naruto knew that his idea was at least a million times better than standing in a corner of the street handing out flyers. Furthermore, aside from being a better way to spread their influence, it was also a good method to present some faith energy for his mother. "I will teach you how the church spread their belief. Like I said, starting a business isn't an easy thing, especially with just the two of us. And what make you think selling fast foods and drinks is a good way to spread our influence in Kuo?" Sona said while rubbing her temples to ease the headache she was currently suffering from talking with her blonde knight. After literally dragging her into a nearby cafe shop, the two of them were currently sitting in a corner, talking about how to make their job easier. Her blonde knight, Uzumaki Naruto, had suggested starting a business around the recently rejuvenated Michaela's church, but for the life of her, Sona still couldn't see his point. "What I'm suggesting you is copying the church's method of spreading their influence. Tell me, Sona. Before coming to Kao, you lived in the underworld all your life, right?" Naruto said with a soft smile on his face, not even minding the fact that his king was annoyed at him. At his question, the girl in question fixed her glasses in an attempt to regain her composure and nodded. "And since there is no church in the underworld and the one in Kuo is abandoned, you have never had the chance to see what the church do to spread their influence. But I'm different. I'm raised by the church. I've been living in one for all my life until recently, so I know the way they work. But even if you don't know exactly how the church operates, you must at least know what they tell their followers to do every day, right?" Naruto questioned with a mischievous expression on his face as he remembered his conversation with a sweet girl named Hazakura Saiso. The idea of stealing the church's method hit him like a comet down the earth when he told her what to do with the devil summoning flyer. Whenever you are in trouble, just grip it tightly and call out my name. I will appear right before you. Play background music. All of you is all of me, no game no life's lost. You mean praying? Right, the answer is praying. Now, see this. The blonde said, still smiling mischievously as he picked out a flyer from his pocket and adopted a praying posture with his hands clasped together, the flyer being kept in between. Sona raised an eyebrow, confused by her knight's sudden action before widening her eyes when Naruto began to pray of all things. Dear Lady Michaela, please grant us strength to protect my important friends. The young Citri stared at her blonde knight for several seconds, expecting him winced out in pain, but to her surprise, nothing happened. Several more seconds passed by and suddenly, the dark-haired heiress stood up from her seat, her eyes wide and her mouth agape when she felt a tugging sensation from the back of her mind. It was the feeling of being summoned, or rather, called by a human, and the source of it was sitting right before her in the form of Uzumaki Naruto. How? Sona stuttered, ignoring the fact that her of all persons had done such an embarrassing thing as stutter. The mischievous smile on Naruto's face quickly turned into a cheeky grin as he waved the flyer in his hand back and forth, watching with amusement as his king's eyes glued onto the flying paper which was glowing a soft blue light. And then, sudden revelation hit Sona like a truck and she fell into her chair. For a summoning flyer to work, the user must fuel it with strong emotions and needs. Naruto had done exactly that while he was praying to the mysterious woman named Michaela, and somehow, it had worked. No, it wasn't a coincidence or anything. Naruto had done it with a purpose, and she knew exactly what the blonde was trying to show her. Praying was an act of expressing one's emotion, and also a way to ask for guidance from God or a higher being, so in a sense, it wasn't different from the devil summoning system. However, unlike God, who had since long spread his influence all over the world by the use of religion, so that his followers could call upon his help willingly and officially, the devils had only bad reputation in the human world. To sum it up, since praying to God for help and calling a devil for wishes were practically the same, the prayer could be used as a way to activate the summoning flyer. So that was his plan, truly ingenious. Coincidentally or not, the once abandoned church in Kuo had been rebuilt just a week prior, as per Naruto's request for joining her peerage, and it didn't reject devils from entering. While the young Citri still had trouble believing it, she must admit that whatever Naruto had done had completely removed the oppressive feeling any other church had. After seeing the result, she had been nagging the blonde knight for more answers, but he still kept his mouth shut regarding the matter. Back to the main issue, according to Naruto, the church was named after a mysterious woman named Michaela, who also appeared in his prayer and only worshipped her, not the God of Bible. But the fact that said church and its deity had no connection to Vatican or the angel faction in particular was currently only known by herself, Rias and Naruto. So from humans' point of view, it was no different from any other church out there, except for the worshipping Lady Michaela part. If their flyers were to be distributed there, saying that it was some sort of amulet or good luck charm, people would gladly accept it and might even use it to form a contract with them devils. All in all, it was a good idea. The amount of people receiving their flyer and actually kept it would greatly increase. However, that method also raised many problems, such as being found out by the church or the summoner finding out they were devil, etc. Tell me more details about that ingenious plan of yours. Sona said with a smile as she paid Naruto her full attention, who in return, grinned at her and complied. At first, the young Citri had thought that her knight was just joking about starting a new business to make their job easier and had intended to stop him using perfect logic and reasons. But now that he had caught her interest, let's just say that one Sona Citri was really determined and stubborn when she set her mind on something. Stop background music. All of you is all of me, no game no life's lost. All according to plan. The first phase has been progressing smoothly since the operation started, and preparation for the second phase has already been made. Less than 1 month from now, Michaela's chain of fast food stands will be opened at various locations, successfully covering Kuo and our influence. A certain dark-haired heiress thought while reading through a report one of her many employees had sent her regarding the preparation of the second phase. A small smile made its way to her face as she finished the long report in her hand. After going through the plan several times with Naruto to find any error it might have, Sona had immediately returned to the underworld and asked her family for permission and funds. While it's true that she didn't want to rely on her family too much, she couldn't just let such a brilliant idea go wasted because of her selfishness. So after taking out several kilograms gold and borrowing some 100 servants from her household, Sona had immediately kickstart the project. Sona didn't know why the blonde knight was so insistent about naming the company Michaela, but since he was the one who thought the whole thing up, she guessed he had the right to do so. They were currently in the first phase of the project, which included giving out free food and drink around Kuo, while also spreading news about the upcoming opening of Michaela Fast Food Company, or MFFC for short. Everything was going according to plan. Their PR was constantly going up, and the amount of humans who received and actually kept their devil summoning flyers had also increased by a large margin. Of course, instead of giving each passing human a hamburger, a cup of Coke and a strange-looking flyer, they had redesigned the thing so that it was imprinted on each paper bag, can and bottle they gave out. The magic circle was now only half as big as before, and instead of using Japanese, Naruto had suggested using Latin and English. To quote Lady Michaela will grant your wishes, just pray. Convincing her parents to print that quote on their products had been hard, but after proving that this Lady Michaela Naruto seemed to worship was a deity who had no connection to God and his angels, the old couples had finally, reluctantly agreed. Of course, that was only possible thanks to her effort, and a certain magical girl too. Even though the second phase, which was the opening phase where they would actively selling out products with devil summoning flyer, hadn't been launched yet, Sona had already seen the result MFFC brought. The amount of contract her family received had increased, and while there were some incidents like the summoner didn't realize they were summoning a devil, the young heiress could proudly call MFFC project a huge success. Setting the document about MFFC aside for a moment, a frown marred Sona's pretty face when she looked at the small calendar on her desk. That day was coming. 1 week later, Ria's Gremory, her best friend and rival, would decide her future love life in a fight against Riser Phoenix, her fiancé, and obviously she wanted to give the redhead a helping hand. Rias had recently obtained 2 new powerful servants in the form of Haidu Issei, wielder of the boosted gear, and Asia Argento, holder of Twilight Healing. However, since they were both newly reincarnated devil with little to no experience, Sona seriously doubted they could help much in the upcoming raiding game. That's why the young Citri wanted to help her friend, even though said friend hadn't requested anything yet. But unfortunately, the man she believed could easily help Ria solve her problem had disappeared several days ago after saying he had something to do in Tokyo. Turning around on her chair, Sona took a look at the beautiful blue sky through her window and let out a tired sigh. Please return soon, Naruto-san. A bright full moon, a clear night sky filled with stars, and a beautiful city lit up by LED light of various colors. Even though it was already midnight, cars still filled the street of the capital of Japan as people going back and forth, minding their own business. Taking in the beautiful scenery in front of her from top of an abandoned building, the cyan-haired girl smiled lightly before turning right toward the direction of an abandoned construction site far away and lifted her beloved gun. PGM Ultima Ratio Hike-2 was its name, an anti-material sniper created through her sacred gear gunsmith based on the already existed PGM Hike-2 and PGM Ultima Ratio of PGM Precision. Placing the deadly gun on the wall for support, the cyan-haired girl glared through its scope with her indigo eyes, her index finger moving leisurely around the trigger as she waited for the perfect moment to fire. The powerful lick, which could rarely be seen in the human world nowadays, had suddenly appeared in the outskirt of Tokyo and causing misdeeds. Due to its nature as a high-ranking undead species of the underworld and its ability to summon an army of skeletons, the girl had no other choice but to request her past companion, who she had completed many quests with, for help. The plan was simple. He would go inside the abandoned construction site, defeating as many skeletons as possible, and lured out the lick while she would wait outside for an opportunity. Due to her fighting style, which heavily relied on her guns and enchanted bullets, the cyan-haired girl wasn't suited for close combat and had no other choice but to leave the hard part for her companion. However, since it was that guy she was talking about, she believed he could easily complete his part without much trouble. Through her scope, the cyan-haired could see blue light occasionally lit up the darkness inside the abandoned construction site, which meant her companion had already engaged in combat with the lick and its minions. Keeping a calm face and steady breath, the cyan-haired girl lightly caressed the trigger before channeling a bit of magic to her eyes, enhancing her already 20 tense eyes further. Activating her sacred gear gunsmith, the cyan-haired girl created a special .50 BGM caliber bullet and loaded it. With her preparation done, all she had to do now was wait. Soon, a blond man in his early 20s could be seen running out of the construction site with dozens of skeletons chasing after him. Aside from a scratch here and there, the man appeared to be fine. Quickly taking in the entire battlefield with her sharp eyes, the cyan-haired girl aimed her gun at the large hooded figure hovering behind the horde of skeletons and pulled the trigger. The large boom could be heard as the special bullet created by her sacred gear flew through the air with sound speed and hit the lick in its chest. But that wasn't all. Instead of penetrating through the lick and continued its way to the concrete ground like any other's anti-material bullet, the special bullet the cyan-haired girl created exploded right after impact, engulfing the lick and its minion nearby in a fierce explosion. However, befitting its status as one of the highest in the hierarchy of undead, the large lick had quickly created a sphere of dark energy around its body, protecting it from the exploding bullet she used. The bullet had almost penetrated through the barrier, stretching it to the point of hitting the lick's chest, but couldn't go through since it exploded right after that, causing little harm to the monster. Quickly realized that she had been too greedy for wanting to kill the lick in one shot and used the wrong bullet, the cyan hair girl conjured another special bullet, which looked like a screw with its spiral structure, and loaded it with a calm face and smooth flowing motions. Adjusting her aim a little, the girl pulled the trigger again, firing the special bullet at speed incomprehensible even for a modified anti-material sniper. The special bullet flew through the air, spiraling so fast it created a trace on its path before slamming into the barrier surrounding the lick. Created with a spiral shape and screw-like structure combined with the speed it was fired at, which was even faster the sound, the bullet easily penetrated through the black barrier, shattering it in the process, along with the lick's skull on its path towards the concrete ground. Unlike the previous bullet, which was created with the intent to explode on impact, the spiraling bullet was created with the very intent to pierce through all kind of defense, thus explained its strange shape and the deep hole on the concrete ground. Facing this kind of bullet, the barrier the lick had conjured stood no chance. But the fight wasn't over yet. Touching into the power of her ancestor, the cyan hair girl conjured a black bullet out of thin air and fired it at the center of the lick's skeleton body. With a loud boom, the bullet flew out of the gun's long barrel and hit where it was intent to without any resistance. For a moment, nothing happened. No explosion, no crazy piercing power, nothing. But when all the skeletons in the battlefield suddenly collapsed on its own, the cyan hair girl smiled, knowing that her bullet had completely negated the lick's necromancy power. Not missing the chance created by his companion, the blonde man leaped into the air with his flaming katana and finished the lick with a downward slash, burning the undead monster to ashes with the intense heat and divine power of his blue flames. Looking through the scope of her gun, the cyan hair girl could see her blonde companion, giving her a thumb up, just like how he had whenever they finished a mission. A soft but beautiful smile appeared on her pretty face at the familiar gesture, and she responded by also giving him a thumb up, which she doubted he could see considering the distance between them. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.